Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Line Change, the NHL betting podcast from the Action Network. My name is Michael Leboff, and joining me for this shortened Wednesday evening podcast, or I should say Wednesday evening preview podcast, are Tim Kalinowski and Nick Martin. 3 games on the docket. Some NHL news we can touch on when we talk about the first game as well. And that game is Canadiens and Flyers. Habs are plus 154 on the road in Philadelphia. Flyers coming back at minus 185, and the total here is 6. I do think that this game kind of just fits with the pattern that we've seen with Philadelphia, which is when they get to these prices, you should be a little wary of backing them and start looking the other way. And we've seen Montreal punch up pretty well in these kind of spots. Additionally, like the Flyers, just they've hit a little bit of a stumbling block. 1 win in 6, I believe. 5-on-5 numbers dipping. They're now closer to the middle of the pack when you look at like expected goals and high danger chances and that stuff as well. So yeah, this team could be the better 5-on-5 team on Wednesday night, but they just that stuff helps when they're an underdog, and especially because you got to win that battle if you're Philadelphia because you're not going to win on the margins. But when you're laying this kind of number, you might not see the results, bear fruit of a good 5-on-5 game because it's just not the team that they have built right now. So yeah, I like the Habs here, Nick. I know this spot really reminds me of the Blue Jackets encounter we saw last week, and I know that Philadelphia deserved to win that game. But that I think lends itself to my point more than anything.
Yeah, I see it from a numbers perspective. I think it's the right play. From a feel perspective, I think Philly gets right here and takes advantage. I still don't think the Habs are very good. I think Philly's better than they've shown in this last stretch. And I think the Oilers game and the Pens game kind of sewered their numbers, but the Oilers and the Pens are crippling everyone analytically right now. So I don't know. I don't love it. I don't think we'd be hanging around this game too much on another slate, but I kind of think the Flyers are going to get right here and get a solid win.
Yeah, the price seems a little too expensive for Philly to get right. I mean, we've talked about it before. We like Philly, but as an underdog, a plus sign next to their name. Not really as much in situations like this. I grabbed under 6.5 at the time of recording. Still out there a little bit. It's going trending towards 6, but I would really like under 6.5 if you can get it. Both these teams, especially in their last 10, have been under teams. Philly 2-8 to the over in their last 10, Habs 4-6. They're bottom 10 in goals per game. Bottom 10, the Habs are in expected goals. Philly in the bottom half there as well. And then both of these teams in the bottom 3 in expected power play goals. So it's not a lot of avenues for scoring here. I mean, obviously, maybe you take a shot at 6 if you have plus money there, but yeah, I don't expect a lot of scoring in this one.
Uh, yeah, and these are also two teams that just love going to overtime as well. So that's another angle you can maybe explore if you're itching to have a bet on Flyers and Habs. Like I said, I like the Habs, and I think that will end up being the only bet with any sort of conviction I have on this 3 game slate. But let's move on. Wild and Stars. The Stars just pummeled the Wild on Monday night. They come back to play each other again on Wednesday. Minnesota plus 160, Dallas minus 192. The total here 6.5. I We could see Jesper Wallstedt get a starting goal for the Wild. He's a highly touted goaltending prospect. Marc-Andre Fleury he's struggling. You wouldn't know it by the way he's covered in the media. They do love themselves the flower. But
It's,
yeah,
I mean, it's classic Flower. He makes the amazing diving
yep.
save with 30 seconds left on the clock, makes the unreal loud saves, but then you forget about all the softies and the times he's losing his net and stuff, which he hasn't been bad by any means, but I'm just saying like this has been the story of his whole career
Yep.
where there's no one better at making a flashy save than Marc-Andre Fleury. But I mean there's other concerns than that for sure.
Yeah. The Wild are getting healthier, but they've still got a long way to go before they're back to the team that we think that can kind of click into gear here, maybe make a run down the stretch if they get their bodies back. I do think that the price on the Stars is maybe a little high here, and maybe impacted by what we saw Monday, but I'd much rather bet Montreal than Dallas on this slate. So I'm gonna just stick with the Habs and pass on this one, Nick.
Yeah, I thought that this one I might be getting there on the under, with my hope being that there's a bit of market pushback when Wallstat goes, but it's always hard to see. Like I don't really, it's hard to gauge how people are going to rate it. But my example is that I liked Dallas on Monday, and I liked them more once the Murray announcement came in because Wedgwood had struggled badly, and it was extremely realistic based on Murray's AHL numbers this year that he could play to the level that Wedgwood had. And I think people always overrate just even as simple as just looking at AHL numbers, and just using that as some sort of a gauge, because it feels like every time I you have one of these backups coming in or guys who haven't been in the NHL this year, people just automatically say like third string goalie, backup goalie, and all of these things, when a lot of times that guy can be very close to whoever's owning that role. Like it's not absurd to think that Murray can be close to what Wedgwood's been giving them at all. So I thought it was interesting that there was around 10 cents of market pushback on the Stars. You could have got a slightly better number than you got prior to that announcement. So I'm interested to see kind of what happens if Wallstat goes, who's obviously deserves to be rated even beyond Murray, what the numbers are. I think it could be a decent spot to try and target the Wild. I could see the price getting pretty crazy here. And then the under 6.5 too, I think are looks I might get on. It's a little scary considering Dallas's offensive play, but still think the avenues are kind of there for the Wild. It's scary. They're depleted and they can't own play like they were, but I think that'll be the way that they need to win this game. So I could see myself getting sucked into those two looks.
Yeah, this Wild team, they're getting a little healthier, but still kind of have to see it to believe it. Like I'm not excited to put my money on, like I hope it's getting better. And I know that's the point of gambling. We say it a lot, but I just, if this slate was bigger, I don't even think I'd skip over this game way easily. Way more it'd be way easier for me to skip over this game. But there are only three, so no,
Yeah,
it's too tough.
it's yeah, and I mean they're healthier, but they're still not going to have Kaprizov, their best goalie, and Spurgeon, right? So and
Mm.
Brodin. So it's not great. It's
Yeah,
pretty horrific, really. It's probably the second worst injury situation next to the Devils right now. And I guess if you want to throw the Hawks in there, but no one really cares about that. Um, but I think those like that could the number could be getting there enough. Like we've been good riding this kind of wild stretch where I think the numbers haven't been accounting for those losses enough. But I kind of think it could be getting a little overvalued here. Um, and obviously the Stars, Heiskanen hadn't been having his best year, but he's out too, so that's significant. And then if Ettinger's still out too, and he hasn't been as good. I think there's kind of a lot of balls in the air on this one, but my thoughts would be leaning towards the Wild and the under, particularly if the market can move in the other direction.
Plus 170, maybe, Nick. Wild,
Yeah,
maybe.
I mean that's why I would play plus 170, I think.
Yeah.
Particularly, I want Wallstat to play. I think he's gonna straight up would be better than Fleury right now if you gave him 10 games. So that's why I'm really interested to kind of see how the market rates him if he gets in there.
the headliner is Vegas and Colorado. The Knights will be in Denver for this one. They're plus 120. Avalanche minus 142. Total 6.5. Colorado coming off a shootout win over Boston on Monday night. They are. Is it fair to say they're quietly rolling right now? Because I feel like they're they're just picking up wins every night
They are.
that I check, and it's everybody knows the flaws and can see the flaws are they're like glaring, so nobody's really talking about them the way that we're talking about the Panthers and the Jets and the Canucks and such. So maybe those because those other teams are doing what they're doing, that's part of it. Um, but I do think that Colorado, at least for the time being, with once again dealing with bodies coming in and out of the lineup and suspect goaltending, they found the a formula to win right now. Is it sustainable to go on a run? Probably not. Um, and I do think that they are thriving in games going chaotic. and that's what they'll try to do here against a pretty well-structured team. So this one's pretty hard to handicap. I think it's a lot of pencil and paper stuff to kind of tactically break down, and I lean towards Vegas here if I had to play a number, but it's likely a pass for me, Nick.
I'm pretty low on the Avs right now relative to market, and I don't know. It's just handicapping Vegas right now is annoying. They're not playing very well. Um,
They're
for
not
what it,
scoring.
yeah, I mean, they're going to score more, but they're giving up a lot of goals. And if you look under the hood, their underlying results are right, like middle of the pack for the 10-game sample now. They're not getting great goaltending. I think it's going to be hopefully significant for them when Aiden Hill gets back because Thompson's not saving anything. Um, And then, like, I think the over, if anything, it'll be the chalkiest, most popular play, but I can see the merit behind it. I mean, the Avs just keep pouring their top guys like they're all playing 30 minutes. It's crazy, which is why it's hard. It almost feels like the Avs can't be this good because you look at the way they're winning, and it just feels so weird to think about a team that's this good with like 8 players playing well. But that's exactly what the Avs are right now. They just all their top stars are completely rolling. It feels like every night one of them has like a ridiculous standout performance. Um, and then the other thing about the Avs that has really helped them, I dove into this when I did the Panthers Avs game. They had played a ridiculously bad stretch, and I think this has helped hide because it makes sense when you think about how are they defending this well with, or how are they winning this many games with Georgiev struggling and like 3 players on the back end playing well. They had played a ridiculously bad stretch of offenses in December. I looked at it ahead of that Panthers game and I was like shocked because the teams were averaging 23rd in offense for like a whole month. And then they get out there and give up 8 goals to the Panthers. And then, the Bruins game last night, I thought they probably could have given up more than 3. I tried to get on them, the Bruins live, because it felt like it was one of those ones where they were going to be able to hold the fort down and they eventually get a shootout win. So I don't know. I'm kind of just a lot to say that I think the number's close, but I think the over will be the chalky popular play, and I'm not going to talk anyone away from that, especially if Logan Thompson's in, like I said.
Yeah, I mean I think that's a good point, but in kind of why I'm leaning Vegas a little bit here because I think that in a sense they're undervalued here because they haven't been playing that well, and Colorado is been pretty high variance in terms of like they're scoring their way out of problems, as I like to say. And Nick, you saying you lean over, I think it's really about who dictates this game is going to kind of determine that, because Vegas is 3-7 to the over in their last 10. Like they've really had a hard time scoring. So it's really who you trust more to dictate this game. And just a month or two ago we saw Vegas beat the island or beat Colorado 7-0. So I know a lot has changed, but I'm kind of, I guess I'm kind of opening the door for Vegas to play the way that they want to play. And, the Avs being forced to, use the rest of their bench and force those guys into action.
Yeah, I mean, it's crazy. You look and they're playing like Drouin had 27 minutes of ice the other night. Like it's not even just the big dogs playing crazy min. And I know that he's been great, but that is like a pretty ridiculous comment on like how much you're relying on a couple guys when you'd rather play Drouin 27 minutes than really just. I didn't look at what bottom guys must have got shafted on the ice time, but there was a few. Um, yeah, I think they're both kind of hard teams to handicap right now. They're probably not both. Either of them are really ones I'm going to be on too much. And we talked about it a bit with Vegas, and I think it was a bit of a thing in that Kings game. That they're more than most a team where I'm like willing to maybe try and grade them a little higher if I think it's a spot where they're going to show out and play well. Just because they played so much hockey, and that's the insane thing. They've even played a lot of games this season relative to the rest of the league. So, um, yeah, I think they're a hard team to handicap because it feels like they're just a little, they're going through the motions right now.
All right. That does it for the 3-game slate. I do want to just quickly have a discussion because it's come up a lot now with the Panthers and Jets. Those are teams that we kind
Oh,
of
I thought you were gonna
circles.
say Cutter. Oh, I thought that's what we
Oh
were.
no, I don't know if we should get into the Cutter Gauthier stuff yet. No.
Friedman ended the debate today. He laid down the law, and all everyone else's stupid theories will hopefully go to rest. And that was
Yeah.
just it.
Uh, we don't need to get into that. I do want to ask the question though. We we've seen obviously a lot of betting momentum on Florida and Winnipeg, and uh, so I guess my question here, and I didn't tell you guys I was going to ask this question, so I'm sorry. But if you're looking for a team now to kind of make that leap, right, from kind of sleeper status to a bona fide, favorite, uh, and you're looking at the middle of the board, is there anyone that kind of jumps out to you right now? And since I didn't give you guys a heads up that I was going to do this, I'll go first. I think like the correct answer in my mind would be a team like maybe you could say Pittsburgh, with the way that they're going. And I also think that there will be a little bit of value coming up on New Jersey, um, with the way that their injuries are shaping up. And I do think that there will be things will be a little stormy, for the Devils, for the next couple weeks without Jack Hughes. They might just kind of plateau here or even drift a bit. And when Hughes does come back, if they are playing all right, I do think that there will be a chance to buy on Devils futures. And maybe they can be the team that a month and a half from now, everyone's like, man, is it now the time to get in on the Jets or the Panthers? So, Nick, is there a team that jumps out for you in that conversation?
I think the ones that you gave are really interesting, and I like them. I actually sheepishly added the Penguins yesterday, but didn't really feel like putting it out there. Um, if you can get 40 to 1, I don't even honestly think they're a team that can win the cup, but I have a lot of faith that their underlying profile, which seems to get rated more and more, can have them coming into the playoffs as like a fairly well-seeded team who's like borderline pick them with like a pretty good team, or like, you know what I mean? Like getting a really reasonable price. And I kind of view the Pens as like a ticket you could probably get something out of right now. I don't know if I like the way they like match up down the stretch in the playoffs, but I think there's like a pretty good chance they get in as a team that is kind of more so viewed as having a chance. Like I look at them compared to like Tampa Bay's hopes, and I'm like, what are the differences between these teams right now? Um, so I think I like the Pens, as you said. The one I'll throw out there, and people are going to think I'm kind of crazy. I kind of said it yesterday, but I actually think the Oilers have the upside to be like heading into the Cup at plus 600, plus
Yeah.
650. I think that there is a chance for that if they like keep trending up to a decent seed, which is kind of tough in their division. So maybe you don't need to reach too much, but they'd be like maybe one of my favorite ones on the board. Like they're just completely demolishing teams right now, and I feel like they're maybe still like a hair undervalued because of like their start. And I guess that you could say there's a chance they don't get in. But when you look at the Western wild card, it's like I think if the Oilers don't get injured, I don't understand. Like they're gonna get in. Who's gonna
Right.
push them out, really? Like the Blues. I guess our poor Coyotes are hurting. Maybe the Wild. I look at it and I'm like, okay, if we're getting a better price because of the chance that they're gonna like not get in and maybe not seed overly well, that's great.
Yeah, I'm thinking of a team like the Ottawa Senators.
Oh my God.
No.
I was wondering if the conversation would get there.
Someone
I'll
has to
say
do
this.
it.
I will say this.
There was like 250 to 1
Yeah,
on.
you could easily, you can convince yourself that a 200 to 1 ticket is decent value on the Senators and not be wrong. Like, because if they do play well enough and scrape their way towards some sort of respectability, and they're 7 points out on March 1st, let's just say, which is still a high bar for them to clear it is, and you're holding the 200 to 1 ticket, it's not a bad ticket to be holding. It's just
Yeah,
the
that's
likelihood
one
is,
take.
yeah,
I'm looking, Money Puck has them at 1.3% to make the
I know,
playoffs.
I know,
So that would argue against 250 to 1 being a
I
good number pretty heavily.
I know, but I do think that they are like
Yeah, we know what we think about them. They're better than
I know it's killing me.
27.
Yeah,
Don't
I
worry,
knew
I'll be in there scouting tonight to
yeah,
verify if
yeah.
225 to 1
If
is
when you
fair.
see that when you see the Senators go up 3-0, you'll see Nick, going onto his apps and getting in on those 250 to 1 after.
I knew what I was doing with that. I knew what I was doing there.
Yeah, you just spurred it on.
But I will say, Leboff, you brought up the Devils, and we've said time and time again, like, this is a team that we think is better than what they look like in the standings right now. But their rest of January, like, is not easy. I mean, They do a little road trip here at Tampa Bay, at Florida, at Boston. Like that's going to be a tough spot, playing Boston on Martin Luther King Monday. And then it's, a little bit after that, Dallas, Vegas, Carolina, Tampa, Colorado. Like, ugh, it's just, it seems like a storm where like Hughes, you really need him here. Like, I don't know if I would buy with what their schedule looks like with this little stretch here. Like, I don't see a lot of breaks for the Devils coming up. So maybe they dip a little bit and then you can buy.
Exactly.
Because
Yep.
it's interesting. And I was also just want to point out too, I mean, it seems so square, but looking at Vancouver 22-1 right now, like, I mean, like we know they're getting in. We know like I continue to be fascinated by Vancouver because I think you deserve credit for winning games a lot of different ways. And even though it makes us kind of scratch our head and say the underlying numbers say this regression, that regression, like they win games a lot of different ways. And maybe
Well,
this
and the
roster
underlying
was
numbers
just
are still like I'll jump in on like they're as good as pretty much all the other top teams the
Yeah.
last 6 weeks. Like theirs are right there, like outside of kind of the Oilers and the Hurricanes and the complete wagons who just always show well on that avenue. Um, theirs are still really strong. Like I think they can definitely be priced with the Jets, and not to just keep picking on the Jets, but I just look at them as the outright favorite to win the cup right now, odds wise. And I'm like, what have they really pulled away this much with this 8-0-2 stretch? I think that they're comparable teams. So yeah, I like that. Um, and yeah,
like
there's a ton of market disagreement too. So that's, I mean, we always say this, it's an obvious thing, especially on futures when you just throw the bet down and leave it. But like the Canucks are 22-1. Some places they're 10-1 others. So yeah, there's definitely some good outlier numbers out there.
what's wrong with when the Stanley Cup playoffs start, game one, and you're like, oh yeah, like I missed the beginning, but I have Vancouver 22-1.
Right.
Like, yeah, what's
There's
what
not, yeah, they're one of those teams that if they got in and were competitive, I don't think it would surprise anyone. Like they have a great goaltender. They are capable of defending really well. I mean, they are defending really well if you just are basing it strictly off goals against numbers. So I don't think anything they're doing is like going to be notably like doesn't help them profile well for the playoffs at all. So yeah, I think that, they're not like the runaway ridiculous wagon that they might have seemed at times, but I think they definitely deserve to be, at the top.
And you said it, Nick. If you're looking at this futures market, the way I picked out Vancouver is I just went down the list and I was like, what is a stable goaltending situation? And a lot of the teams ahead of them, I could skipped over until I got to Vancouver. Like that, we talked so much this year about these goalies. It's like, well, how about the team that does have a good goaltending
Yeah,
situation?
it's crazy. And I mean, that's the other thing you always want to keep in mind. This is like a very broad statement, but the playoffs are always so hard to like envision, and everything just truly does become very random. The games get so tight. It comes down to a few things. And I think every year people seem to be shocked and like unimagining that certain things can happen, like the Kraken beating the Avs and stuff like that. And then after the fact, it looks more clear about why it could have happened and that like the cracks were kind of there for the Avs and that sort of thing. So I feel like you always just want to be open to that you want to just try to leave yourself best chance to have like a couple tickets that can get into really competitive series and tap into that. And then it also works to our point of why we've been hating on like the Jets plus 9-1 being like a ridiculous thing to do right now, because I just don't view them as a team that is like going to just dummy. Like I think when they get into playoff hockey, it's just going to be one of those things. All the games will be such nail biters. They probably aren't going to be like blowing a team out of the water. Like they could go in versus a healthy Minnesota, and the games would probably be very neck and neck, like very competitive is like the reality of it. So I think that's kind of the point where you got to be careful um, with what you play. There's only been so many times in my whole like kind of handicapping the NHL life that I've thought teams like were warranted being below 10-1, really, because I think that's just the nature of the playoffs. So, um, yeah.
All right. You guys did a great job. Uh, we'll wrap up here. We'll be back to preview Thursday night. A much more fun slate to get into, to sink our teeth into.
Oh,
So
let's throw this out there, Mike, too, so that we have slightly less hate at the potential of 3 borderline passes for just this slate. I think we'll probably be talking about it, but I think the Sharks could be a great opening line. They play Montreal on the second leg of that back-to-back Thursday, and that could be hopefully the Sharks win tonight, but that could be the time that they end it. I think they can really
Well,
play a
you mean,
competitive game with Montreal, who've got limited offensive weapons. So I'm definitely circling that as a spot where I'm going to try to get the best openers on San Jose, and I could see there being some silly ones.
uh, yes, but you couched it wrong because that will be the losing streak that'll be the start of a 2-game winning streak after they beat Toronto on Tuesday night,
Sure.
which we're
Either way, I
recording.
like it.
Yep.
Whatever it is.
All right. Well, get those Sharks bets in early. That's why you come here. Getting 24 hours in advance notice on a nice Sharks bet. Worst team in the NHL. Can't wait to bet them.
I
For
love
Tim,
just letting it be known that I'm looking ahead
yeah,
at that
just looking
too.
ahead. Can't wait to find that next Shark spot. For Tim and Nick, I'm Michael. Good luck with all your bets on Wednesday night.